Since I can remember, I really had no ability to truly empathize with the suffering of other people. Even the idea of helping other people would make me almost physically uncomfortable. This is a story about my progress on the spiritual journey. A long time ago, I made a decision. For so long I had really tried to make my life work, but it simply wasn't. No matter how hard I tried, I would always self-sabotage my life and ruin any progress that I would make. I could be really disciplined and do difficult things in the short term, maybe a few weeks, but like Icarus, I would always seem to fly too close to the sun and burn out and fall to my doom. Then I would spend 2 to 3 times as long trying to get my stuff back together, only to repeat the cycle again and again. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and I felt for so long that I was getting nowhere. The crazy thing is, and I think that we all deep down know this, but I knew from the very beginning exactly what I needed to do. But I avoided it for a long time because I knew how great a sacrifice I needed to make. I always knew that I needed to share my ideas with you. I always knew I needed to work out and be healthy, to quit all of the addictions, to give up silly desires. But it's like half of me wanted to do better and improve, and the other half of me wanted to destroy. The decision that I made came from one random day when I thought, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, there was only a few options for me, but my thoughts were kind of centered around, okay, well, how am I going to make money? So I thought, well, I spent my whole life making music, so I know for a fact that I'm going to do that. But the pressure of needing to make money causes you to really buckle down and figure out what you're going to do for the next 3, 5, 10 years of your life. But I realized that, well, I could be a billionaire in a penthouse and still want to commit suicide. And I could also be a starving child in India and be absolutely elated with joy at something as simple as finding a piece of bread. I saw that material success had absolutely no correlation whatsoever with inner happiness or inner success. I decided that first I was going to be happy with nothing, because I could have everything and be unable to enjoy any of it. But if I was happy and content with nothing, then everything else would be a great bonus. It became obvious to me when I realized that the path of God was the highest path. So why would I focus on anything lesser? 2 quotes from Jesus stand out to me. The first is, what does a man profit if he gains the world but loses his soul? And the second is, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then everything else will be added on to you. Now let me tell you, my mind was kicking and screaming the whole time because of this decision. Because the pressure of being broke really brings out the worst thoughts and emotions in a person. So I was constantly torn on, how do I make money right now? And then also focusing on the path of God. So the mind would naturally focus and hone in on how negative my current life situation was, and how I desperately needed to figure things out. But this was a great practice in surrender. Over time, I was forced to surrender and give up my resistance to the present moment. The place that I have been living, although not ideal by any means, was the perfect battleground for spiritual growth. All of my spiritual progress has happened within the last few years living here. And the majority of that progress happened within the last year and within the last few months. When I arrived here, my mom had just passed away, and I was deeply resentful and had great hatred for the world. Very strong and heavy attachments. Since I can remember, I really had no ability to truly empathize with the suffering of other people. Even the idea of helping other people would make me almost physically uncomfortable. If I didn't see very clearly how something would benefit me, then there would be great resistance to helping anyone. Very rarely did I even think about other people. All I would focus on was my own self and my own feelings. Only on a superficial level could I care about other people. But deep down, I was only ever concerned about myself. Now, on a surface level, I only care about myself, but deep down, I only care about other people. But back then, I could only sympathize with others from a purely intellectual level, but was incapable of really feeling anything. I just didn't care about anyone other than myself, which had been true since my early teens. Since in my early 20s, when I made the decision to take on the spiritual path, I had to deny the material gains. With a deep level of self-importance and narcissistic tendencies, I was constantly disgusted that I had not achieved everything that I desired. In terms of material gains, I had negative success. But because I had such a grandiose sense of self-importance, my current life situation was unbearable. I remember one day I woke up and there were hundreds of maggots all over the floor in the kitchen. And if you aren't familiar, these things move very quickly. They had already squirmed to other rooms in the houses. I had to go around sweeping them all up. Inconveniences like this were common. Sometimes we didn't have a toilet, whether the toilet was clogged or that our water had been shut off. Sometimes we didn't have a shower or any hot water at all. For some time we didn't have any power at the house. There was a time where the house was being condemned. During this time we had to wash dishes outside and cook outside, and we couldn't do laundry. I was continuously broke and didn't have money for gas or the gym, and often even food. The house was almost always a chaotic mess, and there was cat pee on everything. So you could probably see how I was torn in between these two worlds. On one end, I needed to straighten out my life and change my environment. On the other hand, I knew that my external circumstances were irrelevant to the spiritual path, because that was an inward journey. But what I found is that this was the perfect battleground in which I learned not to allow my external circumstances define me. So I continued to oscillate between the spiritual path and wanting to gain worldly success. And this slowed my progression in both worlds. But over time, the situation continued to humble me. I had no choice but to surrender because resistance was unbearable. Every time a triggering situation emerged, I remembered to remain as awareness, to be non-attached to the phenomenon of the external world. As I would remain as awareness, the ego identity would continue to lose its power and influence over my life. I would continue to get triggered less and less as my attachments would fall away. But the deeper I went, the more difficult the journey has become. Eventually, the strongest attachments emerged for me to let go of. What I found as I progressed on my journey is that my heart opened up more and more. In the beginning, my heart was as black as it could be. There was nothing but a small ember remaining that was quickly being smothered out by the darkness. But it was the unconditional love that my mom showed me during my life that prevented the fire from going out. As I continued on my journey, the flame grew brighter. My mind was the source of all my suffering and was cutting me off from the life within me. As my attachments fell away, the life would begin to flow once again. The process of healing emerged automatically and naturally once I was no longer getting in the way as much. Fast forward to today, where I rarely ever consider my own personal selfish gain. Every act of self-interest has at its core the desire to serve other people. The fire in my heart that was once but a moment away of being smothered out is now a great beacon of light. What was once a small ember is now a blazing sun that I will use to light the world on fire, but not a fire of destruction, rather a fire of love. I look at the material success of my current life and think, who cares? In a few short years, I have accomplished more inner growth and change than a lot of people ever experience in a lifetime. I may not have conquered the world yet, but I have most certainly conquered myself. I discovered true peace and contentment while having nothing. As it has been said, you don't need anything to be happy, but you always need something to be unhappy. You see, I found what I was looking for. I completed my inner journey to the degree in which I can no longer continue without engaging with the world. In a way, the journey has just begun. But I no longer live in the world or in the mind, but primarily, I live in the Garden of Eden. I have returned to the natural state of unity, not as an unconscious animal, but as a conscious creator. But you see, I am not trying to be a spiritual guru or a teacher. I'm not trying to be anything. I am simply watching my life unfold and enjoying the experience. I have come to the point where I surrender most completely to the will of God and allow God to provide for me, rather than trying to take control of life on my own. Rather than trying to force things all the time to be the way that I want them to be, I allow things to be as they are. And in this, there is great freedom. What I discovered recently is that the moment when I truly committed to the path, that is when abundance started to flow, almost immediately. I realized a while back that God would not allow me to have a single drop of material success without first purifying the poison that was within me. Not until I completed one journey would I be allowed to go on to the next part, the next chapter, the next phase. If I had been able to gain material success prematurely, it would have most certainly destroyed me. This last realization, and I believe the most profound spiritual growth, occurred only within the last 2 weeks. Before then, I could see that I wasn't truly committed to the path of inner purification. I still had the seed of desire for material things that was hindering my progress. I had for the first time began reading A Course in Miracles. Within the first hour of reading it, I understood very clearly my pathway forward. There was a part in the beginning where the voice of Christ said to one of the individuals, "You have not yet fully committed." And I recognized immediately that that was my exact problem. I had claimed to be on the spiritual path, but I was still secretly invested in getting all of my material desires. In a way, I was serving two masters. I finally gave up and made the choice to surrender completely. The mind causes us to believe that we are giving up something of great value, and therefore we must resist surrender. We must keep our control, because what if God doesn't allow us to get what we want? I want this thing, and what if I follow God? Maybe I won't get it. These are the games that the mind plays. But the fact is that we are only giving up what is untrue for what is true. We're only giving up a fantasy for reality. And all that is true is right here, right now, in this present moment. All desires and aversions are nothing but ideas, attachments in the mind that keep us stuck and create suffering. These attachments are what prevent us from ascending to higher states of being. The moment I made the choice to let go completely, I recognized that abundance entered my life immediately. At the same time, other areas of my life became extremely unstable and chaotic. But I quickly realized that the great change in me caused great change in my external reality. For the new reality to become true, the old reality had to fall away. So when you experience progress on the spiritual journey, it can feel like things get worse for a time. But don't allow your current life situation to distract you from the true path. In fact, use whatever is happening for your highest spiritual growth, because that is exactly what troubling situations are designed for. They are not made to break you. They are presented to you as an opportunity to grow. Once you see that life is not happening to you, but happening for you, you can overcome any obstacle. If you see great change happening in your life, even if it's scary and chaotic, try to rejoice, because it is a sign that you have made great progress. And now your world is beginning to change to reflect this inner growth. Fully commit to the path as soon as possible. Do your best not to get so torn in between these two worlds. Once you have the inner success, the outer success will come automatically. But you can have all the outer success in the world and still never receive the inner success. All the money that you need, all the relationships that are best for you, and everything else you could need or want will be provided for you. You don't really even need to give up your desires. You just have to give up your thoughts and ideas and beliefs about what you think you want, and allow life to present to you blessings beyond your wildest imagination. Because life has in store for you things that you cannot even fathom. And we limit these blessings by saying, no, well, I just want this. Allow life to surprise you. You will perhaps, for the first time, be actually able to really enjoy your experiences, regardless of the external situation.